Hey, welcome back. We have a great presentation for you by we had scheduled J. Arthur Luce, but now we have a river troll. But at any rate, you'll get the joke in a second. The techniques that he is going to talk about is called Niello, and it's a fascinating and ancient technique for doing inlay in precious metal. And I love the setup he has here. It's like a mad scientist kit with torches and even ritual incantation candles. Apparently, I'm really looking forward to see what this is. So, having said that, here is J. Arthur Luce.
O thou discreetest of viewers here in Middle-earth, marvel not that I should tell you so much about Niello, but marvel that I shall tell you so little. Of this art, the very likes of which could engage a man's full energies and make him practice no other art at all. Roughly taken from Cellini. Hello, my name is J. Arthur Luce. I go by Yule. I am not, in fact, a river troll, despite unfounded allegations. And what I have here for you today is a demonstration on Niello. What is Niello? That's probably the first thing everybody's wondering. Niello is a bluish-black inlay material that is a sulfide compound of silver, lead, copper, and sulfur. It is called a fusion inlaid alloy because it's not an inlay in the sense that you put it into something and then compress it mechanically. It's actually fused to the metal, and you can actually overlay it on something and treat it fully three-dimensionally if you like. I have some samples over here. Maybe we can get a close-up on what we've got going on here. I didn't want to bring the whole sword on the plane. I guess I don't like that anymore. But I brought some fittings from a piece I did. And these are sterling silver. And you can see the inlays here. The black material is the Niello. And the silver material is totally the silver part. Very exciting. Niello has been used, some people think, since as far back as ancient Egypt. There seems to be some question about whether or not some of the black stuff they found in Egypt is really technically a Niello. It might just be a sulfided silver. I've been curious to find out about that, but it's definitely been used since ancient Rome. Most cultures that have done metalworking of some kind eventually figure this stuff out. I don't know how, because I don't know who took flowers of sulfur and threw them into molten metal the first time around. Kind of a funny thing to do. But all over the place. Lots of it on Viking and Germanic art. My interest was first piqued in Niello when I was in college. I went to Maine College of Art to study jewelry and metalsmithing. And we had a man named Phil Fike come and do a demonstration on Niello, I think at the behest of my professor at the time, who knew I was kind of intrigued by this stuff. Because I'd seen it on all of these swords, I'd seen it on jewelry, and I'd always wanted to know, like, what is this stuff that I just see that there's this beautiful object in a book, and there's this black material outlining it, and in it just says Niello in the footnote somewhere, and that's all you get. I started doing a little bit of reading. There's some discussion of how to do it in a couple metalsmithing books. Opie Untracht's big compendium of jewelry techniques actually has a nice little section in there. However, this guy Phil Fike at the time was like the premier artist metalsmith working in Niello. So it was a real treat to have him come. He was a very engaging character, gave a great demonstration, passed on a lot of things in person, I think, that would properly be described as mysteries. Yes. Niello is filled with mysteries. One of the things I really like about it is there's a million recipes, and there's a bunch of different techniques that describe how to do it, and it sort of leaves one with a question of what exactly it is, and what exactly qualifies as Niello, and what is going wrong every single time you try and make it with all these recipes. and all these different methods of making. One of the things that's interesting about that, in Phil Fike's opinion, was that there were so many recipes that he started focusing on how you make it. Maybe that is somehow more important. And that's something that I figured out, actually, he's right, that makes total sense, because I tried for my senior thesis every single recipe that I could find and every single method of making that I could find. And some of them were really exciting because we're dealing with molten lead and we're dealing with sulfur, and this metal will actually be on fire at one point. It's very alchemical and will probably fill this room up with some exciting smells. If you've never smelled fire and brimstone, you're about to find out, because this is brimstone. So with all of that in mind, I think we'll start off with how you make this stuff. And what I'm hoping to do is be able to make some and apply it and maybe even reveal a section for you by the end of my demo time here. So it's really important with Niello when you're setting up, get everything set up, because you are dealing with molten metal and you're dealing with flaming sulfur and everything. So you can see I've got my mad scientist table completely laid out here. I've got a fan. We're hoping that that's enough to do the trick once we set the sulfur alight. At home, and you should talk about safety if anybody's watching this and thinking that they would like to try this, I would first invite you, you can go to my website, just search my name. The thesis is up there and describes a lot about how to make it. And you can also read in Opie Untracht's book. This is a really good source on what to do. And what you don't want to do. And what you don't want to do really is breathe a lot of these fumes or lick the Niello. I think that's right out. You don't want to make a habit of that. You want to make sure that you're all set up and that you don't have anything that's going to catch on fire inappropriately wherever you do it. At home, I have a big vent hood. I do this all under a hood that sucks it well up and away. Okay, so let me start off here. I've got the copper, the lead, and little silver scraps. Very exciting. And this question of recipes boils down to usually the amounts of silver, copper, and lead that you're going to be using. Sometimes there's a prescribed amount of the sulfur, but often the recipe simply says in excess, which is something I like in a recipe. Phil Fike's recipe does tend to be the one I've found that works the best, and that is 6-2-2. And I think at some point you could ask yourself, why not 3-1-1? And I'm telling you, Phil Fike told me it's very important that the recipe is 6-2-2. So I'm going to stick with that, because that's what the man said. I'm going to measure this out, and we'll see. We got a limited torch size, so I'll try and make a small batch. And we'll get this guy on. 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay. It's going to be a mess with that little stuff, but we'll see. Okay, so I'm measuring out the silver. Theoretically, you could be wondering if the alloying content in this sterling silver is going to affect things, and the answer is nah, not really. If you don't know, sterling silver has something around 9% other alloying elements, usually copper. It's not going to affect things too greatly. So I've got this measured out, the silver, and I guess we'll just do that there. Let's see. Okay, so now we'll use significantly less of the lead because it weighs so much more. Okay, so what did I did 6. Oh man, we're going to have to do a lot of math here. 6, 2, 2, so half, 5. Okay, there we go. That's 7. That's 3. We're going to have to find the lucky piece here of lead. Get down to 5 grams. 10 grams on the silver. And there's 4. Maybe these two guys will add up, right? 4. You know what? We may just wing it. Yeah, well, we're coming up with 4 every time I do that, so I think it's meant to be. All right. Try and do a similar amount to negative 4. So we'll get back to 0. What are you doing to me here? That can't be right. Oh, that's 5. Okay. Close enough for Niello. As I said, this is an art. This is not a science. And how I make this is going to have a little bit more to do with my final result than getting necessarily these ingredients exactly right. Okay. So I think we're good to go. I've got a graphite stirring rod dedicated for Niello. If you're going to be a Niellist, you want to have dedicated tools for this because the lead in particular, if you're doing jewelry work, gets on things like silver or gold. It likes to dig little pits into it. So I do have a little separate work area. And I do have a collection of tools that are pretty exclusively just for Niello. So let's see if the exciting torch wants to get going. All right. This torch is really nice. It's Noldor technology. They did have this back before the Third Great War in Middle-earth. I'm just preheating the crucible here. I've used this for Niello before. Do I need to raise my voice that much? Probably no. Okay. I've used this before, and you get some leftover bits in there, and you just want to get those out. If you, well, I feel like I have to shout because that would seem loud to me, man. Yeah. Okay, great. Noldor technology also. Okay, so I'm going to put the silver and the copper in there together. I'm going to save the lead for last. It's got a much lower melting point. And, oh, wait, you got to get this guy. I got him. Bye. See you later. He's a cute little orky guy. Yeah. Into the fire with you. Okay, the silver is in there, the copper is in there, ready to go. I also have, by the way, flux here. This is just plain old borax. I'm going to use that once this stuff starts melting. So here we are. I'm going to get that going. I'm going to turn this fan on now. We'll need that in a minute. Okay, once it starts to melt like that, I'll try not to yell. I'll throw a little pinch of borax in there. And I'm going to wait for the copper with the higher melting point is going to go last. I'm going to wait until we're melting. Here I'm going to preheat my graphite rod just a little. Hey, we're not losing this thing, are we? Oh no! The torch is dying. You said it was brand new. It might be that I'm holding it at an angle. We'll see. Okay. Alright, I'm still waiting for that little bit of copper to melt there. Get a little hotter in. At home I have oxygen propane. Makes very quick use of this. But we don't have that here, so we're going to see what works. Okay, we're getting there. Now, this part is really important. This swirling, and this is one of the great mysteries. You've got to, can you get that? I'm wiggling my butt a little, kind of like Sam was there. That's really important. Okay. Just swirl that around. Okay, still got a chunk in there. Oh look, we're totally cooking the tip. Yep, we're going to have to switch her out. I like this guy better anyway. That one? There we go. All right. I'll never get this up here with that earphone thing on, will I? All right. I can finish that wide-mouthed frog joke now if you like. The boraxy action helps sometimes. Let's get that going. 1, 2, 3. Oh, now we're starting to get a little melty. Okay, we'll get there. Okay, much better. Alright, it's going to get exciting in a minute because I'm going to throw the lead in there, which will melt very quickly, and then I'm going to throw the sulfur on top of it, and it's going to be all fun and smoky, and just try not to breathe for a minute, guys. Alright, there we go. Okay, everybody hold your breath. Okay, that's better. It's much more fluid, if you can see that. Okay, comes the exciting part. I'll just put a little sulfur on there. And as you can see, it's actually on fire. The melting point at this point of the alloy should be much lower. I'm going to have a lot less trouble keeping it fluid. You can see right there. That's nice and molten. Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna probably just one of these is good. As soon as this, as soon as this melts off, will be good, I think. Okay, so here's the part that really makes a big difference. And that is, once the sulfur is burned off, okay, I'm gonna set this down. I'm going to swirl it around until a little bit starts to cool, and then I'm going to pour it. Okay, that wasn't an awesome pour. But you can see I've got this little rod here. That is what we like to call a splendid rod of Niello. Right there. And as soon as that cools for a second, I'm going to reach right through here and grab that. You can test this stuff and see if it's going to be good. If it's bad, the most likely thing that's going to happen at this point is you'll get some silver that recrystallizes in there. And when you go to break this Niello, it will be kind of crunchy before it breaks. It should snap very, very clean. And if you look at the ends, you shouldn't see any silver inside there at all. So we'll see. Someone get me the dish over there and just fill out with a little water. So I can just quench this. Yeah, that would be great. So I'll set that down. I can show you what it should do when you break it. These are some pieces I made up earlier. And what it should do is just snap. And the ends should look really nice like that. And what's happening is that this residue that I left, as it was cooling, I was swirling it around and watching for about a third of it to crystallize out. And that's the stuff in the alloy that's hardening first. It's for whatever reason, it's little bits that are have a higher melting point, so they kind of solidify out. And then when you pour it, at that point, you're ending up with the right mix of all these ingredients. I suppose you could try starting off with a little more lead or a little more copper or silver, but this is what I was saying about the method of making it seems to have a bigger impact on your final result. And I think that if we include these higher melting point elements in a higher concentration and let them solidify out, then when you pour it, you're getting the right mix of everything. So this should be cooler now. Let's see if it's going to break really cleanly. Oh, I heard a little bit of a crunchy in there, and I think that's probably towards this back area. I think this little bit right here is probably a little bit of silver recrystallizing. If I had to guess, I'd say this little bit that ran out of this pile, this is probably perfectly good. This, I could remelt that if I wanted to and pour it again. I could remelt the whole batch if I wanted and pour it again. We'll just leave this for experiments later. So that's it as far as making the initial Niello goes. I don't know if anybody sells it commercially anymore. I think it used to be that there were 2 places, one in California, one in Germany, that would actually sell Niello commercially. But the proper course of action, I think, is to make it yourself. The other interesting thing to mention is it seems like this is some really lost art, some old ancient thing that no one does anymore, but it's actually quite common still in Thailand, and I think in Russia, that they still traditionally do a lot of Niello jewelry. Who knew? So I'm just going to move this guy out of the way, and I'm going to get this. This is a piece I'm working on. It's got that migration era twist and straight section. Those are 2 bars set together in the core with an interrupted twist. I think a lot like the stuff that Jake was doing there, with a wrapped edge that's a high layer count of, I think it's 1070, 1074 on the edge and 15 and 20 on that, on the shiny bits. And still very much in progress. I've got some fossil ivory here that's been really nice to carve. This is all sterling silver. These are cast fittings. Solid. I think when I started this piece, I paid a lot less for the silver. I think that it was about $60 or $70 worth of silver when I started making it. And I think it's about $300 or $400 now. So this piece still needs a lot of work. I'm still refining that quite a bit. This piece, however, I think is ready to Niello. Okay. One of the really tricky things about trying to do it on a surface like this is that, first of all, it's a big piece of metal. It holds a lot of heat. It'll hold a massive heat. And we're really trying to get it to about 800 degrees. But it can be very frustrating that you get the Niello nicely applied on one side, and when you flip it over to get the other side and it drips off the bottom, there can be a little bit of a delicate dance, and it might be really tricky with the torch here. So in a worst case scenario, I'll just do one side here with my setup, and then try and scrape that clean. And I can always add more to the other side later. So some people recommend fluxing this, and strangely enough, I've had better luck not fluxing this and applying the Niello very carefully. If you do try flux, just a light handy flux, mixed with a little bit more water than normal, seems to be the thing that works. I like to take the so-called splendid rod of Niello and apply it just like a little brush and some tweezers, just like that. It's a nice way of doing this. Other ways of applying it would be grinding it. I think Theophilus, his method of application was to grind it in a mortar and pestle and apply it like an enamel, mixing it with an enamel flux and actually putting it on a piece and putting it into a kiln and heating it up. This method works really great for me. So let's see. I think I'll just heat it up and go, don't I? All right.
Would it benefit to use heat stops or any kind of, put it into heat stops and
Yes, Don just asked if it would benefit to put the piece in some kind of heat stop or put it on some kind of insulating material that you could set it into. And I have no idea if that would be of a benefit. I've never tried it. It seems like it could work. But I'm going to flood the surface with so much of it that ideally it's not going to be too much of an issue. So, all right. Okay. Okay, so it's going to take a little bit to get this thing up to temperature. Okay. But I can sort of test it by just dragging the piece along it a little bit. And it'll start to flow in there when we get up to the right temperature. If I'm not careful, it'll melt the Niello first. Oh, there we go. Okay, well, I got a Niello blobby there. When the whole thing gets up to temperature, it should flow into place. But I don't want to overheat the Niello at this point. If I overheat the Niello, little silver bits like to recrystallize out. And then when you go to finish it, you get a nice little silver blobby where you wanted something nice and black. And that's no good. Okay. Okay, oh, I'm getting a little traction there. It's starting to stick a little. Okay, you can see it filling up that space now. Okay, it's not quite hot enough. It should be settling down a little bit more. I'm definitely not used to this torch. Oh, there we go. See that flow? That's much better. There we go. Perfect. Okay, if I want, I can take a little graphite rod and spread it out a bit more like that. Oh, there we go. See, it's flooding that whole surface is what you want to do. You're raising this higher than your level of relief because I'm going to come back in and flatten it. It can be really weird at this point. Making this piece so ugly. After you've spent all this time trying to make it so refined. But okay, I'm just looking for little bits where it looks like it's a little depressed, and I'm trying to level it up. And that's probably okay. Maybe I want a little more heat on this backside. Okay, except I remelted a little bit here. This is where you start messing around with it too much. It's a little bit too depressed in there. See, I can actually just... It's holding so much heat now. Yeah, look at that. I'm going to just try and get it into those depressed areas. All right, well, we got to let that cool. Let's see what happens if I just pick it up and move it. Yep, still liquid. Look at that. That's how low the melting point is. It's still liquid in there, if you can see that. one of the things that's happening to me right now is that because this surface is slightly radiused, it's pooling on the edges here, and it's not going into the center, but I can see a little depression in some of the design. And I gave myself extra deep depressions in anticipation of that being a pain. What I'm going to try and do is maybe go back in. Okay, now it's solid there. I might try and heat up the center just a hair. There we go. I want to fill just a little bit more of that space up. See how it's going right in there? Okay, perfect. Cool. Yeah, that's a little... All right, I'm feeling better about that. There's a little patch up there. Okay, so you don't want to quench this to cool it. We got to let it cool, so I'm going to move it to a spot that is maybe just a little colder over here. And I can start describing the removal process. I'm going to use a file again. This is a dedicated Niello file. And it's rusty. I don't really care about it so much. I think I've had it since I was in college. And it's good enough for Niello right now. The other thing, this is like the best thing ever. I use this tool actually for a lot of things. And I don't know if you can see, it was just an old triangular file. And I just sanded these edges flat. And I've got these really nice scrapey surfaces. You can scrape this stuff. It works a little bit better than filing sometimes. And you can also really reveal delicate areas because you've got this topography and you're trying to bring this Niello down to the level, the surface level where the silver or the gold, whatever you're putting this into is. And if you're sanding the whole thing or filing the whole thing, it's really easy to remove too much from one section and erase some detail, or you still have a big section somewhere else. And if you look actually at some of these, if you can catch the reflection in the light, you can see where it's a little more depressed in certain areas because I wanted to reveal that a little bit more. I think if you do a flawless execution of Niello, the thing that you find is that, yes, it's perfectly smooth, but it's not, practically speaking, always going to be. And I like this tool. This is great because I can really expose areas very carefully. So, did we get water in this guy? Could somebody for me please get that sink behind me? Oh, hello, sink. Now I might quench this in a minute just to kind of speed things along. There's a risk I could crack the Niello. That's why you don't, generally speaking, want to quench it. But if I let it cool down just a little bit more, I think we'll be okay. No.
Aluminum, like you have a melting point very close to this, you can't get it visible heat in it. Mm-hmm. So you heat the piece and touch a piece of pine to it. If it smokes and chars, it's at 800 degrees.
Oh, huh. That's handy. Especially because 800 degrees is sort of the range that we would like to aim for with this. Yeah, that's great. All right, there we have it. A nice ugly application of Niello all over that beautiful design I had on the other side. The reason I've got this water over here actually isn't to quench. The reason I got the water is because this stuff has lead in it, and that's one of the things you want to be very careful about. I don't file this out in the open. I try and do it wet, and that's to control the dust, just to sort of keep it from getting all over the place. Again, it'll mess up jewelry stuff if it gets on it, and you don't want it there, and you overheat it. But it's bad. Because there's lead in it, you want to be careful. I would normally be wearing rubber gloves as well, but for today, I'm going to break all the rules, just because. Let me get this over here. It's okay. I mean, the guy who taught me this stuff had his blood tested, and he did have slightly elevated levels of lead from doing this for 20 years and being really careless. So for today, it's okay. I'll be all right. Just going to clamp that here. That should make this pretty easy to deal with. It's not working in the water. Keep water on it. Dave, you mind washing this off later? No, not now. I mean later. Get the lead dust off there. Okay, so you can see I'm hitting the high point there. And we'll eventually wear that down. What I think I'm going to do for the sake of demonstration is just pick a spot and reveal it, since we got just enough time, I think, to do that. So I'm going to use the file to get rid of most of it. I can use that paper towel. That'll work for getting rid of that stuff. Okay, excellent. You can, if you choose and you're careful, save these filings and remelt them, and you can actually still use this stuff. Oop, I don't want to hit that guy. To be a little more careful on that spot. All right. Okay. I'm starting to reveal a little bit of a line. You can also see right there, that is a little air bubble. And those can really ruin your day. There's a certain point at which you just decide to live with that little air bubble that might be in there for one wrong note in a symphony. Does not spoil the whole thing, does it? The worst flaw, I think, is the silver recrystallization is really... That is much more noticeable. I don't mind a little bubble here and there. And that's why I don't use the flux. I found that I had much greater propensity to create little flux bubbles in the Niello that would sit on top of the Niello layer and still create this perfect depression. And then when you go to scrape it away, you've still got that little bit there. I just tried it one day without the flux to see what would happen, and lo and behold, it worked just fine. Okay, oh, we can see a little bit revealing itself here. These are the moments that I really love in jewelry and metalsmithing. Making Damascus, for example, the thing that I love, one of the great rewards, and I think that a lot of us here share that experience, is when you first etch that blade. Jake was talking about that. Like, the blade I have here, it's not, I need to repolish it and re-etch it. I just wanted to see what it was going to look like because it was so close, And I knew I wouldn't get around to totally finishing it for a long time. And Niello has that same moment of revelation for me that I really like, where it's starting to take shape around the outside now. Oop. And we'll see where it goes. If you find as you're working that you're revealing a lot of the areas that you want to, and it's still a little depressed, if you're careful, you can reflood it, and you can try and do that again. This stuff really likes to stick to itself. It really likes to stick to the parent metal. So it's fairly forgiving that way. However, there's a point where you're trying to reveal the topography, and you're removing a little bit of it each time that you do that. And so there's a point of diminishing return with trying to salvage it, and sometimes you just say, okay, I'm not going to wreck it anymore. No, not at all. It's very friable. It's not malleable. Don just asked if you could forge this material. No, this is the last thing you do to a piece, generally speaking. Niello it, clean it up. It's not a lot more you're going to get done. You're not going to solder anything to this. Really all you can do is is finish it, sand it, polish it. You can over polish it, and it will actually wear away faster, generally speaking, than the background material, which can be an interesting effect because it depresses in a little bit, or it can be something you're not excited about. Yes, Peter.
Something that is not clear from watching you filing is how, I'm very curious, how does it react to filing? Is it glassy? Is it hard to file? Does it take well to filing? Yes,
yeah,
I'd
come
love
on
to.
over and try it. Come experience it. It's glassy.
It is glassy.
Yeah, if you want to come over and feel that, or
is
if you
it
want
okay?
to try that later, yeah, I think it would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, just come on.
Right now?
Yeah, come on over. Yeah, you just file a section right there. You can see what it feels like. With the scraper, you'll notice really how friable and glassy it is. And the scraping bit, it really actually responds really well to the scraping. Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. Thanks. I think, see, Peter Johnson did some work on this piece, and I think I can add an extra $500 or so to the asking price. And furthermore, I was informed last night that, I had been considering this something of a dagger, but on much higher authority, I'm now told this is, in fact, a short sword. Yes. So, the buyers, please take note. Famous piece now. Yeah. So we got some more stuff coming out. Another little bubble that I'm not excited about. But we'll see. Maybe it'll go away in time. Let me see if I can change my angle here. Oh, there we go. Yeah, all right. I'm going to go in right here and try and clean that area up. Some little bubbles in there I'm definitely not thrilled with. Oh, there's a nice little moment happening right there. Yeah, maybe I'll show you some scraper action. This might be a good one for sitting. So you can see how this is a really nice way to selectively edit where you're removing material. And you can see it just makes these really perfect shavings. And look at that, consolidating right there. That's cool. Okay. Should clean this edge right up over here. And there we have a little bit of that horn sticking out right there. There's some sandpaper behind the box over there that would be helpful. Someone could grab. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. The head should be fun. We'll do that. And it's nice thing about these scrapers, you can get into these little spots like that. Heat them up. Okay, I'm just going to clean up some of the background scratches on the silver before I continue with this. One thing that can happen with the scraper is that because the Niello is softer, sometimes it can scoop out a little bit of that area and kind of get it a little uneven. But I'm just going to take some 280 grit wet or dry paper here. This is really good stuff for this application. Okay. This will help get rid of some of the distracting scratches in the background. Reveal it a little more. I can see I'm gonna have to touch up some of those little bubbles. Though I think I may do that at home with a more controllable heat. I think that's part of what happened there. I think I got some sections overheated a little funky just because I'm not used to the big map gassy torch there. So. And you can do that. I left myself probably about 1 millimeter's worth of topography to work with. So if I have little sections like that where there's a whole lot of little bubbles, I can get back in there, bring the whole thing up to a general temperature range and then go in with a real fine point torch and selectively add right onto that little spot and get it to melt and settle out and disappear some of the bubbles. Sometimes there's one you've gotten far enough down in the relief that you really can't push it anymore. And you just have to live with that bubble. But I should be able to clear those guys right out. You can see as I sand it that it starts to really take on a whole different quality and character there. So got rid of some of those scratches. Let me see if I can get the rest of our little friend's head revealed there. Where did I put the scraper? Okay. Good idea with the scrapey tool is to change your direction quite frequently so that you're not creating little grooves that you really want to see. Look at that eye just pop out. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, let's do some sanding and see where that gets us. If you want to be a bladesmith, one thing you'd really better get used to. I know you think it's all fire and drama and anvils and clangety noises and dark elves and dwarves, but really, it's just a lot of sanding. Sanding. For days and days and days. It's okay, usually by the time you've been forging something for a really long time, you're ready to stop that because your back hurts and your arm hurts and you've burned yourself in 5 different places and you really need to do something else anyway. Okay, hey, we're getting there. All right. Funny thing about Niello, it seems to like being sanded and at a matte finish much rather than being highly polished. Sometimes when it's polished, the glare actually sort of removes a little bit of the contrast. And so one thing it does actually like is steel wool. Do we have any steel wool? No? Okay. Well, I'll take it to a 400 grit. That'll be good enough. How much time do we have? 10 minutes in it. I can probably blast through that and try and get the whole thing more or less revealed. Let's see what happens. We are going to do some forging later on, right? Tonight? Awesome. You got to tune in later for the forging, guys. That's the fun part. Yeah, right. Sanding. And then crying because it warped or it cracked or the pattern came out crappy after you heat treated it, and then you've got to forge all over again. Yeah. Right, yeah, there really should have been some abrasives in that up there. Oh, wait, grinding can be very exciting. What with the sparks and stuff. We need to get some grinding later. You could, but it would probably tend... Oh, the question was, can you grind this? Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you can probably grind it right off in like 2 seconds if you're not careful. But it will grind, yeah. You can... it's metal. I mean, it's a very weird brittle metal, but it is metal. So it'll do all of those things that metal wants to do, aside from bend. Won't bend at all unless you made it bad. Okay, hey. This side, for whatever reason, is coming out a little nicer without too many bubbles. Good way to get rid of the bubbles also is to, you can make kind of a paste with your filings with just a really light application of flux. And I haven't tried this, but I would guess that the best thing would be an enameling flux and gently heat that up and get it to settle right into those areas. So maybe I'll try that later. With you probably don't have any kind of like plumber's flux or anything? No? Oh well. Okay, hey, there we go. I wasn't sure if I'd really be able to do this in an hour. Pretty exciting. Okay, well, I'll do some finishing sanding on it. Okay, there's still a few scratches in there, but I'm not going to take it all the way down, in part because I'm going to repair it, fill up those little bubbles, and I don't want to remove too much topography in there. I've still got a good amount of relief. I've got room to play in there, so I'll be able to fill this up, but the material is going to settle in a little bit each time that you reheat it at this point, and that means you're going to be sanding it down to get it to be flush. If indeed that's what you're going for, the traditional way to finish this is to make it flush. But again, there's nothing that says you can't just treat this as a three-dimensional material. It will carve quite nicely. So let me just get that with a little bit of a 400 grit, a finer grit. And does anyone have any questions at this point? Right. Yeah, that's a good question. The question is if I was going to do both sides of this piece, and this will be an issue for me. It's one of the reasons I don't mind there's some bubbles, because I know I'm going to have to heat it up again and do the other side. The question was, would you finish it and then do the other side? No, you would have to get both sides completely done, because every time you heat it back up, the material is going to recede slightly, and also, if it's upside down, it's just going to drip right out. So. I haven't tried yellow ochre because I'm afraid that it would just mix in there and get funky. So we are coming up on the hour, and that was pretty good timing. So here we have a lovely little critter. Oh, I can see a little spot in the nose. I've got to file that down. That's because I was avoiding hitting this little band here, so I'll have to more carefully get in there and sand it and clean it up. But for a job done this quickly, I think it's looking pretty good. So marvel not that I have told you so much. Marvel instead. I have told you very little.
That was really good. I would shake your hand, but you're poisonous.
I need to wash them.
You're poisonous right now. All right, that was really exciting for me. I had seen the Niello on Yule's work before, and I had zero clue on how to do it. So now this is quite an eye opener. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with the lead part, but it's beautiful work. Thank you for doing this. Don't forget that we still have one more presenter to go, and it's a really good one. We have a great presentation coming up by Peter Johnson. If you've ever wondered what makes a sword actually a sword, and not just a long, sharp piece of metal. If you really want to know, you may think you know what a sword is. My guess is, unless you've heard Peter speak before, you probably have only been around sword-like objects, as David Delagardelle calls them. I never made swords until I heard Peter Johnson's lecture. I made a lot of things that looked like swords, and I made my first sword just a little while ago, everything before, because of his lecture. So stay tuned. It is quite revelatory. And ArcticFire2012.com. Thanks for tuning in, guys. See you soon.